All right, I guess that's the end of our lead-in music, and so we can start putting words out on the air. Hey,
There we
welcome to
go.
Real Monsters again. God, you guys keep coming back for more. What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, and don't let the graphic that is up there now.
Oh, thank you. Hold on. God dang it.
We
I,
are
I,
not talking about
uh,
legacy.
you know what? You do 1,000 things right.
Yeah,
Come on, where's Skidmore? Boop. There we go.
we
Holy
are
cow.
talking about something out of really. I think it rivals some of the best Southern Gothic crime fiction out there. A
Well,
little town called Skidmore.
yeah, and by little we mean tiny.
Yeah.
As Dudley Moore might have said in Arthur, they recently had the whole city carpeted.
Yeah, basically.
And you know,
Um,
the one of the signs you had up there. Let me see if I can throw this in here. Um, that the population is so tiny.
437 people at the time that we will be looking at it. That is not current, but way back then.
unless,
Now it's probably 300 or 200 people in the town.
unless there's more murders.
Yeah, that is one thing that I would ask anybody listening to this. Do you believe in curses? I personally don't, but looking at the history of Skidmore and more specifically Nottoway County, Missouri, it makes you think because there is a inordinate
Yeah,
amount of just the most violent types of crime you can possibly think of
and
in this tiny county.
it's not like it's like one uh, segment of the population that's going around causing all this trouble either.
No, no, it's scattered, very scattered in terms of perpetrators. But the entire county has about 22,000 people in it. That's it. And that, in big part, is because of a university in the county seat of Maryville. I think we have a slideshow of the general sort of area to give people the idea of the geography, if
Yeah,
we could pull
kicking that
that up
off, kicking that
first.
off. So coming up is a map of all the counties and the one highlighted that we're talking about.
It
Um,
is in extreme northwestern Missouri, literally abutting Iowa.
very close to Kansas.
Yes, very close to Kansas.
And
And
what's at the northwest corner up there? That'd be South Dakota?
northwest corner there would be Nebraska.
No, Nebraska. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And the other interesting thing about this county is the river that flows through it, from which it took its name, the Nottoway River. That actually flows through another Um, very crazy case we've
Ah,
covered.
we talked about this one. Yes.
The Nottoway flows through Villisca as well. And in fact, after the Villisca axe murders that we covered in a different show, the cadaver dogs, when they were brought in after the brutal murder of 8 people, they tracked the scent to the Nottoway River by Villisca.
Ah.
And it's a bit, the towns are
So
about
it's in the
50
water.
miles apart.
So this is
Yeah,
not an economically thriving county.
no, no, and things only got worse for it as time went on. That's really, a whole lot of factors go into that. But yeah, that is the county. And then you see Maryville in the center. There's a college there, and there's a abbey, a Benedictine
Oh, really?
abbey. And I don't know why they would choose this location, but actually the largest collection of artifacts from Catholic saints is
Relics?
housed in that, yeah, relics.
Like
The
in
largest
like
collection of
anywhere
relics in North
in North
America
America? Wow.
is housed there in Maryville at the Abbey.
Weird.
Um, yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, there is an overview of the city of Skidmore. You can see just a basic grid there.
Yeah, just to give you
Um,
an idea, I think if my entire family from my parents on down moved to Skidmore, we would increase the population by 50%.
yeah. Oh, exactly. I mean, I actually went to high school in a town of about 600. So I kind of get that dynamic as well. We didn't have any violent crime
Yeah.
in that little town, but yeah, I understand the dynamics some.
My
Um,
parents are from towns in Idaho that were even smaller.
oh, wow.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I've seen those kinds of places.
yep. It's the 2007 flood of the Nottoway River. I'm not sure what the crest level was, but yeah, I mean, Skidmore is basically a place where you would think nothing happened. It started in 1881 along with the county, and there was a doctor who was one of the founders of the county, and his sons were brought in and held for his murder, the doctor's murder, even though with his dying breath after he was shot,
Yeah.
he blamed his political enemies. It was Albert P. and Charles E. Talbot were the sons of Dr. Perry Talbot, one of the county's founders. And it, like I said, he was found shot in his house, and he said, "It's my political opponents who did this to me." But still, they brought the sons in. They ultimately executed them by hanging on July 22nd, 1881.
Well, that's because the political rivals bribed the judges.
Could be. Um, but now, what's interesting about that, I should have grabbed a picture of that. I looked around, but I couldn't find one. The tombstone of the brothers is a vertical column with two hands clasped in friendship.
Mm.
and the inscription on it reads, "We died innocent," even though it's misspelled. Innocent.
Yeah,
Um,
but truly in those days, spelling was a lot more um, fluid.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
It
absolutely.
wasn't until the first dictionary came out that spelling became rigid. It's true.
um, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm not disagreeing
Yeah.
with you there at all.
Don't
But,
argue with me over this, Wes.
oh, we got a lot of other stuff I could argue with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so you fast forward 100 years from that
Yeah.
occurrence, from the county's founding, to July 10th, 1981. And this crime was what the county got its infamy from.
Ken
Um,
Rex.
Kenrex McElroy. He was known as the Bad Dog, the bully of Nottoway County. And on July 10th, there was a resident. This is just telling from their perspective. This woman's husband in Skidmore was up smoking in the garage that early morning. And he hears a series of what they thought were firecrackers, but he deduced that they were gunshots. So he hops in his vehicle to drive towards the noise and see what it was. And he ultimately comes back just totally shaken up and telling his wife to keep the kids inside. Quote, McElroy is in his truck with his head shot off and blood running down the highway.
Hmm.
Which, by the way, that happened for hours. His blood ran for hours after he was shot. Um,
And of course, they had eyewitness accounts and suspects and all of that, right?
they, oh man, you would think so.
It's a
This
small
is what
town.
is
Who
so
could it?
amazing about it. The number floats dramatically. The number of witnesses to the murder of Kenrex McElroy floats dramatically from a dozen all the way up to 70, 145, depending upon who you ask.
Wow.
But that's the problem, with small towns. Um, they stick together. And that gets into the second part of this. You have all these witnesses, but no one has said anything. No one
Yeah.
comes forward.
That's
Um,
astonishing because Ken Rex was a pillar of the community.
no,
No?
we will get to that. Oh, we will absolutely get to that. But
Yeah,
what
this is.
happened was he walked into D&G's bar on the main drag of the highway in the town. And the owner, a guy by the name of Del Clements, who we have a picture of, with a cowboy hat and the rodeo guy, I think it's at a cattle auction where that picture was
Oh,
taken.
yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
He told him basically to get the hell out of his tavern and leave town. And so Ken Rex gets in his truck, and his wife Trina is in the passenger seat, and the shooters start opening fire from behind.
With his
Um,
wife in the car?
yeah, with her in the car.
Wow.
So they shot around her, and ultimately, before he got in the truck, the crowd that was inside the tavern that day followed him out and sort of swarmed around. before the shots rang out. Um, and that's the problem here that we're going to see is that really because you have nobody else coming forward, Trina ends up being the only real witness.
And she had her back to the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, and she's not exactly what you would call prime witness material. But yeah, they shot him, and Ken Rex's foot stuck on the accelerator of the truck, so the engine's revving
Yeah.
for a long time after. The EMTs arrive, and one local, in fact, said if he's still alive, this is as they're watching the EMTs, if he's still alive, they'll have to shoot him again because he'll kill all those people.
Yeah. And
But
that, by the way, not an idle statement.
yeah, not at all. We'll see a little bit about Ken Rex here as we go on. Um,
So this picture is Ken Rex and his wife and son, I think. Yeah.
yeah, let me click on that. Yes, that no, that is Trina and the son, and then the lawyer after he
Oh,
was shot.
that's the lawyer. Okay.
Yep, yep. Ken Rex was a guy. He is 6'2" or 6'3". Jet black hair, sideburns, blue eyes. And a lot of people reported something that we've talked about a lot on this show, the psychopathic stare.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way that I took it with what they said. They didn't literally say the psychopathic stare, but they said that he could, stare daggers at you. He could turn you into a puddle just by looking at you. But now,
Well, I mean,
there was
especially if you understand that his menacing presence was not idle.
no,
This is a guy
not at
who
all.
this is a guy who had no problem following through with his his evil intentions.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That actually gets into it about 5 years before all this happened. There was one guy who he was just out on a private road one day, and a truck is coming at him. And the truck stops this guy on this dirt road and says, "Get the hell out." And it's Ken Rex. And the guy gets out and he says, "Well, what's the problem?" He says, "You the asshole who was at my house in a white Pontiac?" And this is just bewildered. He's like, "Well, what the fuck are you talking about, Ken?" And he says, "You fucking liar. You own a white Pontiac and you were at my house." And he ends up shooting this guy in the stomach with the 12 gauge.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing you usually walk away from.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely. He shoots this guy in the stomach, and in fact, he still had buckshot in his viscera when
Wow.
Ken Rex was murdered. So, I mean, there was just no motive for that. And Ken Rex did not get any jail time either. This is a
What?
guy. This is a guy who had 19 felony indictments on his record, but he was
How many
able to get off
convictions?
only one, the
Wow.
very last one. And
Wow.
that's what we will get to. Um, yeah, and in fact, with that case, when he shot the guy in the stomach, he apparently had two witnesses who said he wasn't there, who alibied him, in essence. But, like you
Even though
said,
the guy who was shot said that's the guy who did it, that
yeah,
didn't count.
yeah, yeah, Ken Rex had two alibi witnesses. But
Wow.
like you were saying with that, Ken Rex was not a guy who was um, afraid of intimidating to
Yeah.
get what he wanted. He would, that was his default by a lot of accounts. Oh, I'm sorry, it was not 19 felony indictments, it was 24.
Okay.
2 dozen. And here's a few of them. You got quite a few for cattle and hog rustling. So he's stealing livestock. Um, a couple charges on molesting a child, 13, 14. One charge of statutory rape in 1955. Um, for the for the guy with the buckshot in his stomach, assault with intent to kill, 1976. Assault 1, 1980. Took over $50, 2 counts, so theft. Burglary. Felonious assault with malice, 1972. Forcible rape. I don't know why they would add forcible on there. It's kind of
Is it
redundant
just
to me.
well? There's statutory rape, which isn't forcible, so it might be to distinguish that.
Yeah, I guess that could be, but yeah, that was forcible rape, flourishing a deadly weapon, and arson, all in 1974. And then,
Busy year for Ken Rex.
yeah, and then 2 counts of child molestation that year as well. Um, he had a hotshot lawyer by the name of Richard McFadden who represented him for quite a few of these. And this is, the typical guy you would think of being on a commercial late at night, brandishing
Oh yeah.
cash and big rings and fast talker, and he's just, gaudy as fuck about everything. Um, but yeah, he's a lawyer from Kansas City who was paid in
Oh well,
cash
there you go.
to represent a
Kansas City
um,
lawyer. Oh.
yep, yep. Um, let's see. Now, and that's where we get to around 1974. We get to Trina McElroy, who was an interesting character because she was about 13 when she started seeing Ken Rex, and Ken Rex was married at the time. And
Wow.
he starts picking her up at school and dropping her off and everything. And they become lovers, and the relationship gets cemented. Um, and they are trying to stay together. And she ultimately gets pissed that is refusing to leave his current wife.
Okay.
So that's when she cries rape to the local officials. And she later recanted that, saying it never happened. But you know, she's just it's a weird dynamic,
Which
to
which
put it
which side do you
mildly.
believe though? The original claim or the recant?
Uh, I would believe, I think, the original claim.
And that she was pressured to recant?
Yeah, because this is where it gets even weirder. he Ken Rex asks her folks for her hand in marriage, even though he's already married. Which I'm not
Right.
totally sure how that
Well, I
works,
mean, you can
but
getting engaged is just a promise. It's not legally binding.
this is true, but they wanted more than that. Um, but yeah, they said no and they wanted him the hell away from her.
Imagine some some
Yeah,
what was he in his 30s at this point?
um, yeah, late 30s. He was 47 when he died.
So
So, yep,
some
40.
30 something comes knocking on my door for my 13-year-old daughter. He ain't crossing the threshold, man.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Um, but yeah, they put a hard line in the sand saying no. And what does he end up doing with this rape charge hanging over his head at the same time? He takes her, they go to Kansas, and they get married. Why? Spousal privilege. She therefore can't testify against him.
And it was okay for her to marry without parental consent in Kansas,
Yep.
apparently.
An even more backward state than Missouri. Trust me on that.
And what about his first wife? Is he not a bigamist now?
He is.
Okay.
He is a bigamist. And they return to Skidmore after all this. And both the wives live together in the same house with Ken Rex.
Oh, yeah. That's got to be just heaven on earth.
Yeah. Very, very,
For
very
exactly
weird.
nobody.
Yeah. So they're living together in the same house, and the kids are, living together and mixing. And apparently, none of them saw any issues with it. Although there was evidence that Ken Rex was abusive to his wives, he was called a good father to the kids, and the kids said that he never abused them.
Oh,
So,
well, okay. So
yeah,
that
it's
makes the
got that going
scoreboard
for
974,000 to 1.
it. Yeah, basically, if we're tallying at this point.
For those of you
Um,
who keeping score at home.
oh, yeah. But, yeah, so they have this whole weird dynamic going on, and, you're in the Bible Belt in Missouri. People just, they don't like that either. It's screwy on a lot of points. Um, I personally don't have an issue with it if they want to do that of their own free will. I would have an issue with her age, though,
Yeah.
with all of it. But bigamy itself, yeah, they should, fuck off with that. A
Well,
vice is
absolutely.
not necessarily a crime.
Agreed.
Um, but
But the law's on the books.
yeah, yeah, and in the meantime, Ken Rex is keeping up his criminal enterprises and, cattle and hog rustling mostly. I
And
would say
he doesn't have
probably
any kind of legit job, right? Like he doesn't.
not that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, none at all, from what I could tell. And it keeps going on with that. And one day, this was around 1980. I was just looking for the date on that. April 25th, 1980. There's two of the McElroy girls enter Bowenkamp's grocery. Um, that was one of them was 14, the other one was 4. They were gonna go there to get some pieces of candy and other stuff. And the 4-year-old ended up picking up 2 to 3 pieces and trying to just leave with it the way that 4-year-olds do, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't really piss the Bowen camp off with that, but
Well, no. I
apparently
mean,
they just
it
said,
a little kid doesn't know any better.
yeah, exactly, and exactly. But after this episode, when they left the store, Trina comes back and saying, quote, she was bawling when she came home, the kid, and that they accused her, the Bowen camps accused the kid of, quote, raiding the store. So Trina heads to the store, irate as hell, wanting to know who accused her kid of shoplifting. And she walks in and asks all of that and says, quote, you're about to meet Kenneth McElroy. So what does Ken Rex start doing? He starts cruising slowly past the Bowencamp's house and their grocery at night, just looking, stalking, low-level harassment at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and he just slowly ratchets it up like other things he would do. He would get close to the house on a public roadway, take his shotgun and fire a shot into the air at night,
Mm.
uh, and things like that. And ultimately, it escalates to where Ken Rex turns up at the store's loading bay, where Mr. Bowenkamp, who we have a picture of, he's the older guy with, I believe, overalls and the hat on. And he's back there just sitting, watching the world go by, taking a load off. And McElroy rolls up his sleeves after getting out of his truck, and he says, you want to fight? And Bowenkamp replies, I have no reason to fight you. And Ken Rex, he takes his 12 gauge out of his truck, puts one in his neck and one in his gut. Bowenkamp
There he is.
shoots him twice.
What?
Yeah. Over, 2 or 3 pieces of candy. He shoots the guy twice, and luckily, the first responders got there fast enough to where they saved Mr. Bowenkamp. And he
Wow.
was able to finger Ken Rex with all of that as the shooter. Um, and Ken Rex is arrested shortly after that. He spends one night in county, and he's bonded out.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's weird. I just don't get why they would do that, especially with this guy's indictment history.
The lawyer's got to have something on the judge. That's all you can figure, right?
It could be. I mean, I don't know. But after Mr. Bowenkamp got out of the hospital, the harassment continued from Ken
Well,
Rex.
shock.
Yeah,
But here's the thing about it. This guy has no sense of enough.
no, none at all. I mean, he views himself as being invincible.
Yeah.
He really does. Uh,
He can do anything with impunity, and why not? Hasn't that been the case his entire life? Hasn't that been the history of his entire life? Nothing bad happens, no matter what he does. Why would he think
well,
anything else?
I mean, I hate to sound like I'm rationalizing for him, but he did have a hard life being the 13th of 14 children in a very poor house with
Hmm.
an abusive alcoholic father. But it doesn't justify this shit at all.
No.
There's no doubt. But um, the Bowenkamp's kids said that they lived in a state of, quote, constant fear for almost a year because of Ken Rex. And they also said that if they called the Nottoway County Sheriff, if they came at all, it would be about 3 days after
Oh, for heaven's
they
sakes.
called. Yeah.
Wow,
And it,
3 days.
yeah, Ken Rex was that intimidating to some people. And in
Remember,
fact,
folks, when minutes count, the police are only days away.
yeah, apparently in Nottoway County they were. In fact, the town marshal for Skidmore quit after Ken Rex threatened him. Because Ken Rex, he asked him, he said, well, Marshall, are you going to testify at the trial? And he said, well, yeah, Ken, it's my job. I have to. So, yeah, he threatened him and he quit. And the charge there was assault with a deadly weapon. He was facing a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of life. And the prosecutor on this was a young guy by the name of David Baird. I don't believe we have a picture of him. He was only 3 years out of law school and only months as a prosecutor.
Wow.
So he's pretty well outmatched by Mr. McFadden out of Kansas City.
The slick Kansas City lawyer.
Yeah. But ultimately, they get to the trial, and Ken Rex is found guilty. It's his only felony conviction out of 24, as we
Jeez.
said.
Well,
It's amazing
the kid came through. Good job.
to me. Yeah. And
Did
it,
the new lawyer did what nobody else could do. That's funny.
yeah, this is true. But what gets me about this, McFadden appealed the verdict. Fine, you can expect a defense attorney to do that.
Right?
But then he asked the judge to bond Ken Rex out. And they
After
did it.
conviction?
Yeah.
What?
He was found guilty and he was allowed to leave prison on bond pending his appeal.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Uh,
don't get that at all.
it's just sounds like a lot of corruption.
It it might be that, it might be the good old boy syndrome that affects a lot of small towns,
Poor Ken just misunderstood.
or just flat out incompetence with this. But yeah, he was allowed to bond out with that. Um,
Yeah, so there,
and
there's there is that one quote. Is it Heinlein that says, "Don't attribute to evil what can be explained through incompetence."
yes, Hanlon's razor.
Yeah.
Uh, yep, that is a big part of it. And that is the theme that will reoccur when we look at some of the other crimes too. Um, but yeah, there were many townsfolk in the courtroom with that, were watching, and
There to
they,
support Ken, right?
oh, absolutely not. They were there trying to show force and show the judge that, hey, this is a bad guy. Um, and they end up, driving back to Skidmore with their tail in between their legs. But Ken Rex beat them there. And get this, he's inside the D&G Tavern with an M1 rifle with a bayonet
With the bit.
attached.
What?
Yeah, he's in there bragging.
For those of
With
you who aren't weapons experts, the M1 Garand was the primary infantry weapon of the U.S. Army in World War II and Korea. It was a 30-06 caliber rifle.
Yep.
Excellent, excellent rifle. Often, I mean, you could go hunting with it. A lot of people did. And you can still buy surplus ones. They're still available to be purchased. Surplus M1s.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's in the bar, his finger in it, and you're feeling, like I said, invincible.
And why wouldn't
Um,
he?
yeah. And it begs the question with all of this, what do you do when the system fails? I mean, I can't say that I condone vigilantism, but
Well,
I
and,
can
and part of the,
understand it.
part of the problem with vigilantism is that almost always they get the wrong person.
Yeah,
They get the
yeah,
wrong
this is
person
true.
almost every time. It, this is the exception. Everybody knows who the
Yeah.
who the bad guy is here.
Oh,
Everybody knows.
exactly.
There's no question about it. He was in
Yeah,
fact convicted.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and the townspeople were going along with the system up
Absolutely.
until that point. This was the watershed moment for them where everything changed. Um, so they end up the morning of July 10th, 1981, meeting at the Legion Hall, which we have a picture of that in relation to D&G's Tavern, where the two are from each other.
Let me get
Um,
that for you.
so they end up meeting there to discuss, well, what do we do about the bully, the bad dog of Nottoway County, as they called him?
Well, I mean, it really you got to kind of treat him like a rabid dog, right?
Yeah. Um, there were rumors in there of money exchanged to kill Ken Rex. Don't know about that. But there were about 100 people present, and that would equal every adult citizen in the town,
Except for two
essentially. Yeah.
or three. The sheriff probably wasn't there.
Oh, no, the sheriff was there.
Oh, the
He
sheriff was
admitted.
there.
Yeah. Sheriff Danny Estes was present. He said it multiple times. And about the time they started discussing killing him, he allegedly drives out of town towards Maryville. And this is around the same time that Ken Rex is driving in to D&G's to get beer. So somebody reports that, and the whole town, they take their positions. They run out of the Legion Hall.
Yeah, down
And,
the street, through the
yeah,
intersection, down to the tavern there.
yeah, and they fill it up in the tavern. And they follow them out, and you get the others, the shooters, grab their guns. And when Ken Rex decides to leave the DNG, they just unload on him in the middle of town.
In daylight.
Yeah, broad daylight in the morning. Um, there were what we do know. There were about 70 witnesses, although, like I said, that number floats
Right.
quite a bit. There were 3 different calibers
Okay.
used. We have a pictures of the truck to show you what the damage extent looked like. Um, and right after it, the rumor mill was even in higher gear. That
Okay.
was alleged to be like a mafia hit and blah blah blah. Um,
So here's the question though. Um, 3 calibers, but does that mean only 3 weapons?
well, there could be more,
If they had the same
but
caliber, right?
yeah, I mean, there could absolutely be more. But the problem was kind of twofold. One, there was basically no integrity for the crime scene
Oh yeah,
because you had
all the people,
a
everybody there.
scene. Yeah, well, yeah, that and you had townspeople literally cleaning up blood and getting skull fragments, teeth, and everything else off the highway.
Oh yeah.
Um, and the shell casings as well. There was one guy who admitted to picking those up. So, I mean, there's no integrity at all to the crime scene.
Look, if you want to shoot somebody and you don't want to get caught, there's just no better choice than a 22.
Yeah. In fact, the 22 was one of the calibers they found.
Ha! The reason
Um,
the reason why is because they're just lead. There's nothing but lead to them, and they fragment into bazillion pieces, and you can almost never get a uh, a ballistics report off of them.
yeah. Oh, and they're the most common with
And they're the most
street
common,
crime.
and
Hmm.
the bullet travels subsonic. So the a suppressor on a 22 is actually a silencer. It will actually reduce the noise to nothing because it's subsonic.
Hmm.
Faster bullets, anything like much bigger than a 22, you're still going to get a popping sound, but not with a 22.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so there you go, kids. If you're gonna shoot somebody and you want to get away with it, use a 22 and use a revolver so there's no casings.
Oh man. But the trajectory indicates that the shooters were across the street.
Okay.
Um, and now Trina fingered one of them. She said Del Clement fired a fatal shot. Uh, it was the rancher guy that we were talking about, but
Oh, the guy who got shot,
um,
got shot.
no, the rancher, the younger guy, Del
Oh.
Clement, the cowboy at the cattle
Oh,
auction.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Him. That was the guy that Trina fingered as one of the shooters. But as we'll see, I don't know how much you can trust her. Now, allegedly, after Ken Rex was murdered, the guns, or two of three of them, I'm not sure why they wouldn't go with three of them, were allegedly put on or put in a van and driven 8 hours away to Cheyenne, Wyoming. I don't know
Why?
why.
And
Yeah.
how did they get found? Do we know?
Oh, they didn't get found. This is one of them from the rumor mill again. That's the thing with these small towns. There's always a rumor mill with this
Sure.
sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
So the rumor was that three of the guns were in Cheyenne, but they didn't actually find them.
they didn't actually find them in two of the guns. The third one, I don't know why. The third one they just threw in the river, according to that same rumor.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Well,
this was
it was just crazy. Why would they go to Cheyenne? And do you know how many rivers you cross between those 2 points that could been
yeah,
just dropped off the edge, and nobody'd know?
yeah. But and it's almost like if it were true that they were doing that, that the third gun was just an afterthought. That maybe they forgot to take the third gun to Cheyenne with them for whatever reason. But the source for that, according to this one townsperson, was a deathbed confession from her brother.
Hmm.
Um, that some alleged shooters are still alive, and yeah, I mean, it's weird. There's still the silence about it. There
Well, yeah,
probably always will be.
absolutely
But
will
it
be.
even
Yeah.
but it does get even weirder. Like one of the other parts of this, one of the other components from the rumor mill was that somebody apparently saw Sheriff Estes out on a roof across the street taking pot shots at the truck when
What?
all this was happening. But
Well,
I don't get that.
that's easy to determine with you know bullet trajectories in the truck, right? Whether anybody was up there or not.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
assuming he was any good at shooting at all.
yeah. Well, yeah, that would be easy, but to me, it would be incredibly stupid
Yeah.
to do that if you are in law enforcement. If you're in law enforcement and you wanted to kill this guy for the
So
town,
many better ways.
you're going to pull him over. Yeah, you're going to pull him over
In a
on a
very
dirt
remote
road
location. Yeah.
somewhere. You're going to take your gun out, you're going to shoot him, and then you're just going to say he got belligerent and I had to use deadly force.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody could
You don't even need a
question you
throwdown.
after.
He's almost certainly going to have something in his truck.
Yeah, absolutely. You wouldn't need to plant evidence or anything.
Yep.
So I, honest to God, do not believe that part. Um, but yeah, I mean, looking more at Ken Rex's life, it's kind of interesting. Over his whole life, he had 5 wives and 16 to 19 children.
Whoa.
um, it was no secret that he liked them young, according to his daughter. And her quote was 14 was close to average.
Oh, come on, dude. If you have to pick your wife up from junior high, no.
Yeah, yeah, there's a problem there.
There's a
But,
problem there.
um, the kids, they were genuinely upset when their dad was murdered.
Oh, I'm
And
sure.
one of them in the No One Saw a Thing documentary on Sundance put it really well when he started talking about, I don't remember a whole lot. And that's probably for good reason. Repression is a
It's a
vital
Yeah,
survival
absolutely,
mechanism.
absolutely.
Yeah, I thought he really hit the nail on the head with that. But um, yeah, going back to the um, lack of integrity at the crime scene, you didn't have techs cleaning out the truck and looking for evidence. You had just mechanics doing it.
So, remind me again the year that he was shot.
1981.
Oh yeah, yeah. Forensics were not yet super diligent.
Yeah.
Remember that was OJ that made that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was. I mean,
This is
there were procedures in place, and the forensic sciences were coming along, but the OJ defense made it mandatory,
mhm. Oh
and
yeah.
that was what 15 years away, 14 years away still.
Yeah. Basically. And you wouldn't have anything with like DNA back then.
No.
Um but what ended up happening was Estes triggered the NOMIS squad, which was the Northwest Missouri Major Case Squad. That brings in, state officers and a bunch of other local officers.
Okay.
About 18 to 25 of them working around the clock, but only for 5 days, which I thought was kind of weird that they had that set up. Um, they found out that Trina was the only real witness. And again, she pointed the finger at Del Clement. And Del, by the way, was also the owner of the DNG.
Ah.
I can tell you with our business serving quite a lot of rural bars
Yeah.
with beer delivery and liquor delivery over the years,
Yeah.
and going into a lot of dive bars, that's not a class of people that you would want to piss off. I mean, they do
Yeah,
not take
they've got to deal with
bullying.
rough customers, literally rough customers, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, she pointed it at Del Clement, but they really didn't have any evidence for that. And again, you have this greenhorn prosecutor, Baird, who declined to do anything, even if they did, because of that evidentiary threshold. He kept giving that excuse. But it makes me wonder with that,
Yeah.
if the state hadn't done something sooner and just brought charges against this guy, have a trial, and then have him acquitted, he would have at least had finality with it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's such a big part of what the system is supposed to do, is finality.
True.
And I think that's part of what haunts this area, um, is that lack of finality with Ken Rex. But instead of doing anything like that, what they started after the Nomis Squad was a coroner's inquest, which is essentially a grand jury,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
6 people. Um, they're impaneled to look at the case and look at to see if there's a
if indictment should be brought.
crime that was committed.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can indict somebody. They figured about 50 to 70 witnesses. And the yet yet the inquest turned out to be an exercise in futility. They found nothing.
Right.
Um, even though Trina testified in front of them that Del Clement grabbed a high-powered rifle and fired the fatal shots. So, the prosecutor, Baird, also had another witness who was prepared to testify but recanted at the last minute. Now, reportedly, that person did so because they found their fences cut and their cattle missing.
Look, I kind of get that. I mean, if you again, we don't condone vigilanteism.
No.
Uh, is even though it's really kind of understandable in this case, but if you're gonna do that as a community, you gotta stick together. You can't fragment. You can't
Yeah.
have a weak link. Otherwise, it all unravels.
Right. Right. And I agree, but I don't agree with damaging their property with it. Um, but during all of this, during this investigative phase, the entire McElroy clan had to go into hiding. Allegedly, during the early days, there were trucks that drove by their house and fired into it with a rifle.
Same thing that he used to do, that Ken used to do.
Yeah, yeah. But still, that's not right.
No, it's not
When
right.
it's
It's not right
kids and
because he's not there. It's the wife and kids.
yeah. Even though Trina, another thing that she reportedly did, whenever he would go drinking, whenever Ken Rex would go drinking, she would be out in the truck with a shotgun in
Really?
case things got bad.
What?
So,
She was like riding backup?
yeah, essentially.
Holy crap.
But
So
yeah,
so
it's
but so
still wrong to do
which
that.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But it speaks to the dynamics of their relationship. That she stuck around through all of this bullshit and
Yeah.
even supported him in it. Like
Oh yeah.
she was not under any delusions of what kind of guy he was, and she was
No.
okay with it.
No, it's Bonnie and Clyde,
Yeah.
basically. Um, yeah, and one of the McElroy kids, a guy by the name of Juarez McElroy, said it was like a war zone in a small town. Um, and when the coroner's inquest found nothing, they call a grand jury on January 10th of 1982. Now that grand juries are often used as a litmus test by prosecutors to see
If they have
what
a
would
case,
happen if they took it. Yeah, if they took their case to trial.
they're
What
also
kind of
yeah
response would they get?
understood. I there's a lot about grand juries that I don't like, and that is has to do with how one-sided it all is.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. And the fact that grand jury proceedings are by law secret.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
are always in the dark. I'm not sure if that applies to a coroner's inquest.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might,
You don't hear about them much anymore.
no, you really don't. But yeah, grand juries, they almost never happen in a county the size of Nottoway. Um, but the prosecutor Baird, he believed Trina in her story, and he said there was a atmosphere of fear, were the words he used with the witnesses, and ultimately, no witnesses, no case.
Yeah.
So the grand jury finds no true bill, nothing. And that is when it gets really interesting.
Oh, that's not the
It,
interesting part. This hasn't been the interesting part yet. Oh my word.
yeah, that's when it
What?
gets really interesting, and the whole thing gets kicked to the FBI. March 10th, 1982. Trina and her lawyer contacted them. Trina and McFadden, he stayed on with her, contacted the feds about it. And they had some basis for doing so if the sheriff was in on it.
Right.
Because one of the FBI's main functions is to keep elected officials in line
Right.
and investigate abuses of their office. Um, so they contact them, and remember Sheriff Estes being at the meeting?
Right.
That would be enough for conspiracy
Well,
if it were true.
I mean, the whole thing was a conspiracy,
Yeah.
with or without the
Oh,
sheriff.
yeah, absolutely. But the agents came to town dressed like farmers. The
How
that didn't go over
oh my
well.
god, I absolutely got this image of FBI agents trying to look like farmers and not pulling it off.
Yeah, that did not go over well.
They
The
they didn't fool
townsfolk, they
anybody?
ended
Are
up
you
just
kidding?
clamming up and not talking to anybody.
Morons.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but the federal prosecutor's
They probably still had the
strategy,
tags on their overalls.
yeah, probably.
Oshkosh overalls, brand new out of the store, and wingtip shoes.
Uh, yeah, no steel toe boots, that's for sure. Probably doing the stereotype, sticking a long weed in the
Right.
mouth,
Yep.
and everything else. Uh, yeah, but their strategy after that was literally to subpoena every witness that was there.
Wow.
10 agents ended up serving it. Um, and the people, they were just very standoffish again.
Sure.
And it was around this time that the house where Ken Rex grew up was destroyed by arson. Um, so yeah, somebody burned it down. And yeah, the federal case's goal is different than the state's. The
Yeah.
state is going to be looking for who fired the fatal shots, right?
Right.
The Fed's goal, in contrast, was simple. Was Sheriff Estes, guilty of conspiracy or using his position to perpetrate a crime? That's the federal
Mm,
prosecutor's word. There's actually a term for this called color of law that you may not have heard of.
I haven't heard of that one.
That is where when a public official uses their position to commit a crime.
That never happens, though, does
uh, yeah, it's interesting. You get the good old boy syndrome
it?
again.
There's the house on
Um,
fire.
yeah, one of them. Danny Estes is actually a twin. The sheriff is a twin, and both of them are
Oh.
cops. His brother
Ah.
Lanny is an officer in Maryville. Um, and just to be clear here, the credentials to be a sheriff in Missouri,
Yeah.
you just have to get a gun permit and take a few hour, quote, law enforcement class on a weekend. That's the only credential to be a sheriff.
Is it an elected position?
I mean, it's an elected position, but that's the
Okay.
only credential to be a deputy.
Wow.
That's it.
Sure.
Nothing
Yeah.
else.
Why not? Why could you?
That's Missouri for
Why
you.
would you ever need more than that? Oh, I don't know. In case there's a murder to investigate.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe don't have the
Um,
townspeople cleaning up the crime scene.
yeah, basically, get a little fucking integrity there. We've seen this time and time again with the cases we've looked at.
Yep.
So, ultimately, what the feds do is impanel a federal grand jury, and they have different powers and obviously more expansive resources
Sure.
than the state. Um, and they devised this strategy of subpoenaing every adult citizen of Skidmore to
Wow.
try to get at the witnesses.
Wow.
And they found that there was pressure on, both sides to get people to talk and to not talk. And they did a federal autopsy on Ken Rex. They found that he was shot in the head, neck, and twice in the back in his truck.
Okay.
Um, and that's when they also found two shell casings that the townspeople had not been careful enough to pick up. So, and they also found amongst their witnesses three who supposedly saw the shooter. And now,
Okay.
I'm I don't think this applies to a state grand jury, but lying to a federal grand jury is perjury.
Yeah.
Um, but still, it gets to
It
how
would
many
be. It would be at the state. It
eyewitnesses.
would be at the state level too. If you're sworn in, which you would be.
Yeah, I suppose that's true too. Um, but they came back with, again, nothing, no true bill.
Wow.
But they did give the three witnesses names back to the state.
Okay.
And Baird, he just basically sat on them and said, there's not enough evidence to do anything with it. But, again, what of the finality of it? Just bring them forward with the three witnesses,
Yeah.
see what a jury thinks, and go from there. At least he would have had some finality. It's just utterly lacking in this.
And yeah, it's prosecutors have a lot of leeway.
They do.
Maybe sometimes too much in who they prosecute, how they prosecute, who they don't prosecute,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the guy's true reasoning behind those decisions was, but I could imagine a prosecutor looking at it going, you know what? This was a reasonable outcome and just leave it.
Yeah. Well, it's not totally done either, but
What?
um, Trina Trina files a civil suit in 1984 for $11 million. This is her last, gasp
Yeah, against who?
for justice for her husband. The defendants are Del Clements,
Okay.
Skidmore's mayor, Sheriff Estes, and the city itself. But the suit is ultimately settled for dun 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 $17,000.
Ouch.
Yeah. And all the McElroys at this point move away. Trina remarries in the Ozarks, way south of where Skidmore is. And that's, essentially it about Ken Rex. Aside from the story growing seemingly larger by the year with people who get a hold of it and just they
It's
want to know.
right, and it's covered in a lot of different ways. BuzzFeed's Unsolved has covered it. There's
Uh,
documentaries.
no one saw a thing
No one
that
saw
I
a thing.
mentioned.
I think they did an episode of X Files on a that was patterned after this.
Uh,
Uh,
I totally believe it. And it's not the first instance of vigilante quote justice with all of this. There was a incredibly brutal lynching in Skidmore in 1931.
which I think
And
we'll cover that next week. Cause
we can get to that next week with some
yeah,
of the others.
yeah, cause
Yeah,
this county is too weird for one show.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the really, really, really weird stuff yet.
Come on, that's crazy.
This might be a 3 or 4 parter. Seriously.
All right, for everybody who's listening to this, and I'm going to repeat this next week. Go out to the Wikipedia page for your county and see if it has a subheading for crimes, specific
Yes.
crimes. This county does, and I don't know of any other county that would have that.
Yeah.
That's just how
Any other rural
rural
county.
county. Yeah. I mean, Chicago, maybe, right?
Yeah, look up Cook County. Cook County, Illinois. I'm sure you would find some. But a rural county,
With
it's
some,
just,
yeah, it's crazy stuff.
yeah, so weird.
All
So
right.
weird.
All right. Well, Ken Rex, man, dude,
Yeah.
you done wrong and you got what you had. I don't know. I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was justice or not, but he earned it.
And it pains me because if the system had actually
Worked.
helped these people, yeah, if the
They
system
didn't.
had worked, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, they tried to do the right thing for you know a very long time. Lots of years they tried to do things the right way, and they were repeatedly let down.
Yeah,
And that left them.
repeatedly,
That left them.
consistently let
Yeah.
down.
And they started to see what happens to people that Ken Rex doesn't like. They get shot. They get harassed.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know, Americans don't like that shit.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do when you get to that certain point?
Yeah, you band together.
And that's what Skidmore did. I don't know if you'll ever get resolution to his case.
No,
Maybe a deathbed
maybe.
confession. But
So
yeah,
next week I want to make an argument that maybe they weren't acting above the law, the town.
all right.
Just occurred to me, just
And
something occurred to me to make that argument and how that might um, be true. We'll see if it holds up.
it's, yeah, we can do that. Get into the other stuff too because there's a mountain of it.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Mm-hmm. In Skidmore proper and in Nottoway County.
Okay, that's it for part one.
Yep,
Thanks again,
that
Wes,
is
for all
it.
your research on this. It's great as always.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.